It may seem like a strange huge rock floating in outer space that followed you around when you were staring at it from your car seat when you were a kid. But it's so much more. Because you see, there are very few things in this world, or I might have to say out of this world, that have changed humankind as much. The moon is everywhere. Pythagoras was looking right at the moon terminator line when he first started to think that the shape of the earth must have been as spheric as it was suggested by the line itself. The wolf owling at the moon picked as a sign of bad luck in medieval ages. The lunar new heave, especially known in Asia. The moon crying with a space shuttle stuck in her eyes in the Molière's brothers movie Le Voyage de la Lune, the first one with special effects, a movie that changed the history of cinema forever. The Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, Talking to the Moon by Bruno Mars, Fly Me to the Moon by Frank Sinatra, the moon appearing on every kind of art style that has ever been created. The moon is dear to our hearts, so dear that we find ourselves talking to it at night in our dreams, hoping that she would answer back and calling her a girl, treating her like our biggest muse. We once been to the moon. This is the story of how we're going to get back to it, and especially why. The moon is our satellite. It follows us around while we spin and spin in our space, bound to the Earth by the gravity that pulls her close enough to be seen and to influence her seas, but not too close. The perfect balance of nature. There are several theories about moon's origins. The accretion hypothesis that suggests that the moon was created along with the Earth. The capture theory that suggests that the moon was a wandering body that was captured by Earth gravity when it passed nearby. The fission theory that suggests the Earth was spinning so fast that some material broke away and began to orbit around the planet. The giant impact theory that suggests that the moon formed during a collision between Earth and another small planet. The debris from this impact collected in an orbit around Earth to form the moon. It is so a solid rock orbiting around us, with us, that shows us one side of its surface all the time, but it's so much more, as it was already stated. The moon consists of three main layers: a crust, a mantle, and a core. The moon's core is divided into two sections: a solid, mostly iron inner core and a molten outer core. Though primarily made of iron, the core contains also some nickel and sulfur as well. The lunar mantle is the thickest layer of the moon. It's mostly solid, but the zone closest to the lunar core is partly molten. The moon's crust is so uneven, in fact it can be 60 kilometers thick on the side farthest from the Earth, but only 40 kilometers thick on the nearest side. It's mostly made up of oxygen, silicon, magnesium, iron, calcium, and aluminum. The soil of the moon is called lunar regolith, and it's as peculiar as the satellite. In fact, it's made of billions of fragments of meteorites and charged particles coming from the sun that sits as loose materials on the bedrock. The older the surface, the thicker the regolith. It can be as 20 meters deep on the oldest surface. If you think that a sphere orbiting 384,400 kilometers away couldn't have that much influence on our planet, you're dead wrong. In fact, apart from being the brightest object in the sky after the sun, making our nights less dark and more sweet, it influenced the gravitational field of the Earth since it interacts with it. Tides are the result of the gravitational tug from the moon and sun that the Earth feels. If we do not consider the sun for a second, the Earth's oceans facing the moon bulge up in response to the lunar gravitational force, making a high tide. Since there is a difference in gravitational attraction on the near and far side of Earth, it means that, at the same time, there is also a high tide on the side farthest from the moon. So without the moon, our entire oceans and also our climate will be really different. If the moon had suddenly to disappear without any reason, after some time the rotation of Earth will be completely ruined. It will stop being tilted on 23.4 degrees respect to the orbit around the sun. It will be either straight up, creating a 90 degrees angle with the sun, making us forget about season, or it will make the Earth tilt all the way over, so basically lie on its side, making the poles extra hot and the equator freezing cold. The space race doesn't need any particular introduction, since it's one of the most famous things that has ever occurred in human history. One of a kind. Extraordinary mission. At the beginning of the Cold War, the world was split between two nuclear powers, USA and USSR. But it wasn't just that. It was a race. They wanted to conquer people's heart in order to make them trust them and to make them feel safe. So what's better than an astonishing technological achievement to be pinned in everybody's mind, like the first ones to do that in history? That's basically why the space race began. It made people dream big as they were watching through their low-resolution TV screens space rocks take off to bring human species out in outer space. Just imagine the feeling. It looked like the Soviet Union was winning the race since they were the first to launch on October 4, 1957, a man-made satellite around Earth, a floating ball called Sputnik. The Americans were right after them, in fact, in almost every achievement. The first satellite, then the first man orbiting around Earth. They even sent animals into space. Fruit flies, dogs, and chimpanzees. But the Americans didn't want to be seconds. They were tired to be right after the Russians. So that's why, on May 25, 1961, the President John F. Kennedy made at Congress the announcement that they would have sent the first man on the moon by the end of the decade.
We go into space because whatever mankind must undertake, free men must fully share.
This race spilled some blood on the moon's surface. In fact, on January 27, 1967, 3 astronauts, Virgil Grissom, Edward White, and Roger Chaffee, lost their lives when a fire swept through the command module as they were doing a pre-flight test for the Apollo mission. The Apollo program, in fact, wanted to bring astronauts to the moon, and it was just on July 16, 1969, that the Apollo 11, carrying on board Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, take off, that the goal was achieved. The rocket was the Saturn V. It had 3 stages. The first stage launched Apollo, and then, after detaching the second stage, propelled the third stage around Earth to start orbiting around it. Then, after making a maneuver called the translunar ejection, what was left of the ship kept coasting toward the moon for 3 days. And once arriving there, the final module was pulled into orbit by the moon gravity force. Then the crew split up. Armstrong and Aldrin were into the lunar module, called Eagle. They had to land on the moon, and Collins stayed inside the command module. On July 20th, finally, Neil Armstrong walked for the first time on the moon. That is one of the most incredible moments of the history of our species. It can be compared to when we created fire for the first time, or understood how to treat disease with vaccine. Only this time it was happening in front of the eyes of the world. The space race basically ended with the Apollo 11, since the main goal had already been achieved. What didn't change, though, was our curiosity. In fact, space agencies from around the globe kept working for decades to explore space, reaching unimaginable goals. They built the International Space Station, an international effort that has been the home for astronauts from all around the globe and orbits unnoticed around Earth. But now, we are pushing our boundaries once again. We are actually coming back to the moon. This NASA's mission is called Artemis 2, but this time the entire aim of the mission is completely different. It is once again done to prove something, to establish a better future together. It is not a landing mission, but it's a flyby and it's a test flight. NASA already tested the Space Launch System rocket once with Artemis 1, but this time it'll be different since there's a crew of 4 people on board. The spacecraft of the SLS is called Orion, and it is incredible technologically speaking. It will be used to demonstrate a broad range of capabilities that we will need on deep space missions. Since that there is a crew on board, more of the human-centric aspect of the mission will be tested, like radiation shielding, communicating with Earth, or even eating or going to the bathroom, sleeping, human stuff. The mission will be 10 days long, and after orbiting around Earth for 2 times, doing also an elliptical higher Earth orbit, after that the translunar ejection will occur, the crew will be pushed to the moon into a free return trajectory. It means that the gravity will do the job at our place, and they will come back naturally, following the orbit trace by the gravitational forces. So, the spacecraft will not need any more power to come back to Earth. They will see the far side of the moon, the side they will never see from Earth, the so-called dark side of the moon. Then they'll come back to Earth. The crew members are extraordinary people. Ray Wiseman, the commander, Victor Glover, the pilot, Christina Koch, mission specialist, Jeremy Hansen, mission specialist. So why are we coming back to the moon? It's clear that these missions are preparing us for future missions in deep space. It is known to everybody that we want to build bases on the moon and in a not-so-distant future, on Mars. In order to do so, we will need incredible technologies that we are developing right now. We are going to learn how to actually make water when there is none, how to live in cells on a planet without breathable atmosphere, how to use material to protect us from radiations, how to grow food on those planets. These incredible technologies are going to be developed also to be used on Earth. It may seem like in the future, we, as a human species, are going to colonize other planets or satellites in our solar system, bringing the humankind across the universe. But what about Earth? Does this mean that it doesn't matter anymore? What is unclear to most people is that Earth is a miracle of a planet. It is the perfect world. An heaven made of oxygen, trees, water, animals, fruits, beautiful places, and smiling people. We should start prioritizing it along with everything else, because somehow we managed to ruin it so much that it's becoming unlivable. If only we had to start being obsessed with it as much as we are with the moon, we will save life itself. And one day, maybe from the moon's surface, we will see a radiant Earth, looking so beautiful that it made us realize that there isn't a better place than it to live.